Hey guys, I'm going to show you guys another game from Winning Pawn Structures. Again, an excellent book by Alexander Baburin. We're going to continue on and look at another game where white executes this f4, f5 plan. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check out my first video on that plan. This time, instead of a Queen's Gambit accepted, we reach the structure coming out of a Nimzo-Indian. So again, pretty standard theory. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about the opening, so just going to work to get to the meat of the position. I do think it's nice to show you guys the opening move, so you know where it came from. This knight b6 move, Baburin says that it's not prudent. He thinks instead that maybe castling was a better move, sort of reserving the choices for where this knight's going to go. White does have a choice on whether or not he wants to go to d3 or b3. When I looked in the database, it looks like they're both pretty equally played. If we're going to d3, probably going to drop back to c2 and play queen d3 to try to induce g6. In the game, we see bishop b3, which the idea seems to be to maintain control of this d5 square, working against this push. So bishop d7, bishop g5. Notice in the last game, white was forced to play bishop e3 in order to defend this pawn so that he could develop his pieces the way that he wanted. But since black chose this knight bd7 and knight b6, there's no pressure on d4. So he's not really forced to make that extra step with the bishop. So the bishop decides to go back to e7. And we get knight e5. Again, already sort of with the idea we looked at from the last one. Notice that there's no knight controlling e5, so we're going to take the chance to put our knight there. So rook's still on f1, so we have our two sort of critical critical factors that I talked about in the first video. And after b6, or bishop c6, which again is probably a mistake. I mean, it's clearly the idea that going to bishop d7, you want to eventually put it on c6 to control d5, but castling is better. It retains the extra option of just leaving the bishop on d7, which will sort of influence e6 and through that f5, making the plan that white chooses in this game more difficult. So I didn't mention this the last time, but I think that having this bishop on the a1h or a8h1 diagonal is also sort of a key factor in the success of this f4 f5 plan. So given that the bishop has hopped off, white immediately jumps for it. His pieces are already well placed. There's no reason to go put the queen on e2. In fact, he can't because the pawn would be hanging. So we get castles and then just f5 immediately. This time, black decides to immediately resolve the tension here by capturing. In the last game, we saw black played like knight d5 and tried to issue some trades, and we left some pieces here. So after rook takes f5, white has achieved his main strategic goal. So he's cleared the diagonal. He has a lot of good pressure from a2 all the way to g8, and specifically on f7. Notice this rook here, the knight, the bishop, the queen can come to f3 or d3, and then the other rook's going to come to f1. So all of his pieces harmonize nicely, coordinate really well against this f7 square. So again, like the last game, black attempts to seek solace in trades, which is the idea behind this knight d5. He wants to trade the bishops. He may be even going to trade here, or he's hoping that white will trade. It's understandable, because if he just relieves if he doesn't do something, say just maybe brings the other rook over to the c file, or maybe queen c7, something like that, then white's just going to bring more pieces to the board. He can play like queen d3, like I said, and rook a1, and his attack's just going to kind of pile up. So it's understandable why black chose this. So we get this trade. And then queen d3, which again, queen f3 is possible, but queen d3 is probably more accurate because it touches his h7 square. So at some point, we can look at like rook h5 is going to be hitting against h7. After the other rook comes, it might lift and come to h7. Maybe we'll play bishop back to c2 at some point. It just kind of plays the queen in a nice position that has allows additional options into the position. So he brings the other rook in, and so of course the best place for it. So here, black couldn't find anything better than to play f6, which it looks like a strange move. But it's the only real way that he has of defending the f7 square. So, for example, if he plays knight f6 instead, he's actually just going to lose on the spot. After bishop c2, there's really nothing that white can do to stop. Excuse me. There's nothing that black can do to stop white from just sacking on f6 and delivering mate. He can't play g6 because it just drops the knight. He could bring this knight back to try to replace the knight, but it just captures the knight, something takes, and we sack here, and we're going to mate. The only thing that black can really do is give up a whole bunch of material to try to stop the mate. So that's why knight f6 is not possible. He chose f6 instead, which appears like it's going to kick that knight away, but instead we get this really strong move. So clearly the knight can't be taken because of just a mate on h7, because notice the knight wouldn't be guarding f7 anymore, but that would open this rook to guard f7. So black chooses to play g5 here. Excuse me. Where'd it go? I lost my PGN again. Oh, there we go. He played g5, which looks kind of desperate, but he has sort of an idea. If he plays g6, which looks more natural, then just knight takes g6, and after h takes, queen g7, and queen e4. And this pen, because of f6, he's going to reclaim his knight, and he's got two pawns for it. So this is really not acceptable. So black decided to roll the dice and go for g5 here, which does stop the sack on g6. I should learn the coordinates of these squares one of these days. And so just it drops back to the knight to g4, which is adding some pressure against the f4 square. But we'll see later, it actually has the idea of bringing the knight back to e3 to work against this pen here. So after rook d7, which is going to try to guard additionally this diagonal, and allows the queen to protect this square, because the square was the queen was overloaded prior to that, so he was threatening just knight takes, rook takes, and then rook would take, and the knight can't take or the queen can't take, both because of this check here, which would cause some devastating problems. So we get rook d7, we get h4, which is just going to try to crack open the king side even further. Taking is not going to be possible, as we shall see, which is exactly what black did, but it just ends the game quite quickly. So he takes, and then we get knight e3, adding additional pressure against this knight. He comes back, try to defend it, and after this, the knight's just going to fall. He's just going to be a clean knight up for absolutely nothing. He's still going to have a fantastic attack. So black here resigned. If we look at some extra options that he had there instead of capturing, say like king h8, just trying to get out of the pen, this really isn't going to help too much. White can just take, and black can't take back. So if he takes back, then rook takes rook. Wait a second. Is that it? What happens if he takes back? So takes, and then... Well, if anything, he could just play takes here, king takes, and rook takes, and then the king's going to be forced up to to here, and he can maybe. He's just gonna win some. He's just gonna win. He's gonna be up 2 pawns in that situation. If you look at it a little bit deeper, but at the very least, he's gonna be winning at least another pawn back. So we get knight takes c6, knight take or pawn takes, and then bishop e4, trying to guard against this diagonal. But then just queen g3, which again doesn't allow black to capture here, because now if he takes rook, queen takes, and then he gets queen, he gets queen e5, picking up this bishop. So after like maybe bishop g6, we get rook h6, and white just has a tremendously huge attack. He's got lots of threats. He's threatening to win. He's threatening to win this pawn immediately. Excuse me. There may be some situations where the knight's going to go to e5, and because of this bishop's pinned, he could try to capture it. The queen can come over even. There's just the position is just being overrun by the white pieces. So there, even though h takes g5, as we looked at, was a losing move, it was hard to find anything that was going to be much better than this final position. So a really nice, really convincing game, showing this f4, f5 plan. Let's go back and look at it one more time just to review. So this bishop c6 was sort of the key signaling move that put the third factor in place that white needed to think about this advance. So we've got the knight on e5. We've got the bishop off of the c8, h3 diagonal, and we still have our rook on f1. When you see those 3 factors, you should strongly consider playing this f4, f5 plan. So we just get push, black takes, and just finds himself in a lot of trouble in a hurry. After this poor f6 move, he just got lots and lots of problems, because that opens this pin here. It doesn't actually do anything to kick the knight, yeah, just a really devastating game. I suppose technically it's a miniature, only 23 moves, so just a really quick, fast win. So anyway, hope this was instructive. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll continue to make more of these. Thanks a lot. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.